Welcome to the home team, the show where no matter who you root for, here you're a part of the home team. I'm your host, Wyatt Bagnall, and today, week one of the 2025 NFL season is in the books, and we are here to recap all of it. Before we jump in, hit like, hit subscribe. I really appreciate it. And without any further ado, let's jump in. We'll start with Thursday Night Football, where the Philadelphia Eagles defeated the Dallas Cowboys 24 to 20 in a game that I think was a lot closer than any of us thought it would be. Dallas made a really good showing for themselves, but ultimately were just not quite able to overcome the Eagles, despite the best efforts of Jalen Carter, who managed to get himself ejected before even taking a defensive snap. So that was a thing of beauty. I know there's a whole lot of people out there that will make lots of arguments trying to defend what he did, spitting on Dak Prescott, saying that Dak spit on the ground somewhere in the general direction. One of those things is a foul, and one of those things is not. And Jalen Carter is damn lucky that that didn't start an entire brawl on the field, because I think if had that happened, the NFL would suspend him for another game. Um, Players spit on the ground all the time. They even do it in each other's directions. But to actually spit on the guy, that's a step too far. And I think that unless you are from the city of Philadelphia, where common sense doesn't really matter when it comes to being a sports fan, I think most of us would agree that that's not something you really do, and that he got what he deserved. But other than that, the Eagles had a generally pretty good showing for themselves. The big story is obviously that the passing game didn't really do much. A.J. Brown, in particular, didn't really come alive until, well, one catch very late in the fourth quarter. But I think that that's sort of how the Eagles want to play. Like, if we want to be very realistic about this, the Eagles really, they've never really won on the back of their passing game. Like, there's a reason Saquon Barkley is the guy that's talked about in Philadelphia more than anybody else. It's not Jalen Hurts. It's not A.J. Brown. It's not Devonta Smith. Like, the Eagles, when they are at their best, it is run through their offensive line and just run through their running game. And that's what they did today. I think the Eagles ideally want to be throwing the ball somewhere around maybe 20 times a game, 20, 25 times. Like, I don't think they're a team that wants to be dropping back every single game. Now, there'll be games this year where it happens, no doubt about it. But I think that'll be very matchup dependent. And if the Eagles were to just have their way, they would start off as a running team pretty much every time. As for Dallas, they actually defended the run decently well in this game, just not quite enough to win. And obviously, the big story for the Cowboys is having the chance and then CeeDee Lamb dropping a couple of those passes. I think there's three passes that people are really talking about as, wow, CeeDee Lamb dropped the ball. The one on third down that bounced off his face mask, really bad one. The deep post route, like right into the basket, dropped it. That last one where he had to lay out for it, I know the argument is, well, he gets paid all this money, he should catch it. Yeah, sure, he should have caught it. But ultimately, that's a really tough one, and that's less a drop. It's just he wasn't able to reel that one in. That's not so much a blatant, ugly drop. But the previous ones were, and had he caught those, maybe Dallas does beat the Eagles. But as we stand, Eagles 1-0 and get a division win to start, which was the theme this week. And for a whole bunch of these teams that won those division matchups, they essentially won a game and a half. And those teams that lost, they essentially lost a game and a half. So that loss hurts a little bit extra for the Cowboys. Friday night, Brazil game, Chiefs and Chargers. Chargers managed to beat the Chiefs 21-27. And this was a game that was really interesting, where it felt like the Chargers actually outplayed them a little bit more than one touchdown's worth. But they had a few gaffes. The one that really came to haunt them was at the end of the half, where Amarian Hampton runs out of bounds instead of staying in bounds, and gives the Chiefs enough time to go down the field and get some points on the scoreboard. And they weren't really able to capitalize on coming out of the half either by getting the ball, and then the Chiefs came in and they did. So this game became close around halftime because of the Chargers' mismanagement of some of those sequences. But ultimately, they played really well throughout the game. And Justin Herbert in particular, the dude couldn't miss. And a couple of really timely scrambles. Obviously, the one to end the game on third and long. is the one that a lot of people will remember. There was also obviously the sequence at the very beginning of the game where Xavier Worthy gets his shoulder dislocated via friendly fire from Travis Kelce. Unfortunate to see, especially because the rest of the game really felt like Patrick Mahomes was doing a lot of spectacular things, but nobody was really able to help him. And if you're a Chiefs fan, that's got to be something that concerns you throughout this season. Um, I know that people will say, Kelce had the touchdown. He did have the touchdown. But beyond that play, he really didn't have much of an impact in the entire thing. And it just seems like he's a little bit slower. And some people will say they're pacing him for the playoffs, they're doing all that. And maybe that's true, but we also have seen this for the last couple of years. And there's a reason why people have been talking about his retirement. So I'm not saying that he's washed or anything like that, but this is something to monitor, especially if Xavier Worthy's going to miss time and Rashee Rice is suspended. It's basically Hollywood Brown and Travis Kelce are going to have to try to really be the driving weapons of the Chiefs offense. And I'm just curious to see how that goes. Obviously not a game that the Chiefs defense is super proud of either, but some of this felt like Justin Herbert just made some great plays. Ultimately, Chargers win, Chiefs lose, and the Chiefs have a tall task ahead of them to try to avoid 0-2 with the Eagles coming to town next week. Miami and Indianapolis. The Colts dog walked the Dolphins 33-8. Ugly, ugly, ugly game for the Miami Dolphins. I chose to have some faith in the Dolphins and thought their offense could come alive in this game. I was horribly wrong. I'm really happy to see what the Colts look like. It's amazing what happens when you have somebody that can just complete the basic passes and then you stay ahead of the sticks and then you're able to just take your chances. That doesn't happen all that often with Anthony Richardson in the game. So ultimately, the story of this game is, it depends on which team I suppose you're talking about. If you're the Dolphins, the sky is falling. Everything's gone to hell. Tyreek Hill is slipping out on the sidelines. And if you're Indianapolis, oh my God, we're going to the Super Bowl. I think that we need to take a little bit of time to show some restraint with these games, especially the ones that were blowouts. There weren't many, but this was one of them. Indianapolis was definitely playing well, but Miami, I think in a lot of ways this is more about Miami and how this seems to just be a team they're going to be bad. And Tua didn't play well. I think Jalen Waddle got some sort of shoulder injury too. It doesn't feel like it's going to be a good year in South Beach. And as for Indianapolis, really good signs, really encouraging signs. I need to see how they play going forward, as I do with a couple of these teams. But really disappointing by the Dolphins. This feels like one of those ones where let's be watching for them around the trade deadline to be selling, because it feels like they're about to enter a full-on rebuild. Steelers, Jets. I don't think any of us had this game predicted to go the way that it did. You might have picked the Steelers. You might have picked the Jets. I don't think any of us thought it was going to be 34-32 Steelers. Both offenses really, really good. And they both ran the ball well. Both quarterbacks played well. Justin Fields made some plays in there where it's like, okay, it's clearly possible to work, but can you get it on a consistent basis? We're going to have to see. But after 1 week, Jets fans can certainly feel encouraged. Steelers fans, same thing. Offensively, the Steelers were on par or on point, and they had a little bit of rough stuff in there, a couple drops here and there, but DK Metcalf made some really great, after the catch plays where short pass, he runs, he proves why he's a massive freak and why he got drafted where he did and why he was so great in Seattle for all those years. I think the thing that is more important to talk about for both of these teams, though, is their defenses. In a week where we saw a lot of bad offense, and I think a lot of people say, maybe it was just great defense. We see this every year. Defenses usually start off strong. Offenses usually start off slow. They take more time to get into sync, and defenses are usually able to capitalize on that. Both of these two teams were supposed to have pretty good defenses, and neither one of them could do a damn thing. So I am monitoring that situation with both of these teams, because if they aren't going to have their defenses coming to the party, like in the case of the Steelers, it's sort of I think it's an age question. In terms of the Jets, it's a schematic turnover question, and have they picked it up, and are they ready to really fire with it? Obviously, the Steelers win the game at the very end with their defense with the big Jalen Ramsey hit, but anytime you're giving up 34 points and the Jets were seemingly able to get whatever they wanted, um, that sort of concerns me. I mean, Brees Hall uh, averaged 5.6 yards per attempt, and that's not usually what the Steelers want to be giving up, almost 6 yards per attempt. Um, Great win by them, and I believe it's the Seahawks coming to town next week, so we're going to get another good look at the Steeler defense, but I'm watching that with both teams because whenever you see something that's just shocking, it sort of makes you want to reevaluate. But overall, I think both teams can come out of that feeling pretty optimistic and just needing to sort of tighten the screws a little on their defense. Jags, Panthers, the game we all wanted to watch, you know? Jaguars win 26-10. This was one of a few rain delay games or lightning delay games, and every single one of those seemed to have some weird element of momentum completely stalled. This was also something in the Cowboys-Eagles game where nobody could stop anybody to start that game. Then all of a sudden, that rain delay happens and momentum was completely lost. Kind of similar in this game, except for the fact that Carolina never really had it going in the first place. Jacksonville, they do some good things. There felt like there was a little bit left out there on the field for them, but much like a lot of teams in week one, everybody could say that. We saw, obviously, the debut of Travis Hunter in this game. He had 6 catches for 33 yards as a receiver, and I think he played 6 snaps as a corner, got himself a tackle in there, but not exactly the dual threat thing that everybody was anticipating. I don't think that that's something that's likely to happen a whole lot. I think they're going to pick game to game which spot he's going to feature at, and I would say that he's probably just going to feature at receiver more because they feel more solid at corner on the whole. The bigger story here, I'd say, is Bryce Young not looking good for the Panthers. He finished the year relatively strong. Maybe not in terms of wins and losses, but just in terms of he didn't look lost. And the way he started his career and the way he started last season, it was one of those things where everyone was wondering if he was just completely unplayable and he was already a bust and it's not even possible to really use him. He got benched for a bit, came back, and proved that that was not the case, at least for last year. And they might not have won a lot down the stretch, but there were signs of life. And in this game, there was not. I'm not going to overreact to that because, once again, it's week one. I think if you're taking anything definitive away from week one, it's a little bit bold and it's a little bit, I mean, I don't want to call it foolish because there's obviously some things that people will be right about, but I think for the most part, you need to give these teams about 3 games before you really start making like hard evaluations on them. But after one game, certainly not good by Bryce Young. On the positive end for the Panthers, at least Teteroa McMillan looked pretty good given the circumstance. 5 catches for 68 yards, averaging 13 yards a catch. That's pretty good for a rookie debut, especially in a game where the quarterback's not playing well. You could do a whole lot worse than that. So if you're a Carolina Panthers fan, take solace in that at least it looks like McMillan could at least be a good receiver. Obviously, quarterback play is huge, but there's only so much that you can control from that perspective. So ultimately, Jags get the win. Important one, especially at home. And Carolina back to the drawing board because that was an ugly one. Cardinals Saints. Cardinals win 20-13. Came down to a sequence at the end, which I think is a little bit closer than Arizona would have liked, but ultimately they get the win, so props to them. I was in New Orleans. Spencer Rattler didn't play terribly for the Saints, which I think is something we're also monitoring because it feels like we're going to see Tyler Shuck at some point this year. And if we don't, I think it's even more safe to assume they'll draft someone next year. But the Saints showed some fight, I suppose, in as much as you can in a 13-point effort, but they brought it down to the end. And Arizona is interesting. Once again, they're consistently inconsistent, where Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison had several good moments where Marvin Harrison had 5 receptions for 71 yards and a touchdown, 14 yards per catch. That's all good. But there were also plays where they were just off. They weren't on the same page with each other. A big throw was missed in there by Kyler. I'm not sure who's right and who's wrong in these scenarios, but those two always seem to be just a tick off on some pretty big plays that would allow the Cardinals to win these games more definitively. Trey McBride also had a good game, which more people need to be talking about Trey McBride as one of like the next tight ends that's really going to be taking over this league. Really solid showing. Probably, like I said, not as dominant as Arizona would have wanted, but a win is a win. And with 3 out of the 4 NFC West teams winning, you don't want to be dropping a game to the Saints like that. So, good job for Arizona. As for the Saints, they did a good job hanging in there. I don't think anybody thinks they're going to be winning a ton of games this year, but if they can at least put up a respectable showing as often as they can, I think that's something that they can take some solace in. Giants 6, Commanders 21. Ugly. Like, there's not a whole lot going on in terms of the Giants that I think anybody's really excited about. Like, I don't like this thing of people calling for Jackson Dart after week 1. I think that is foolish, and if you're the Giants, you shouldn't do it for a couple of reasons. Number one, that offensive line looks really bad, and Andrew Thomas hasn't been playing, and I would try to hold off any Jackson Dart games until I have my left tackle back. The other thing is, once again, it's week 1. It's one game. I think everybody needs a couple of weeks to really try to let things settle in, but you're in New York City. The pressure is immense. The voices get loud, and it feels like they might do something foolhardy. But I think Dable might want to also save that for later because in a lot of ways, that's the main thing that's keeping him, secure in his job. Like for a lot of these coaches, when they're on the hot seat and they draft a rookie quarterback, a lot of that is it's desperation, especially in a draft where there wasn't a ton of guys that were considered super great. This feels like Dable took a guy so he can make an argument of like we need to develop him, we need time. I don't know that he's going to put him in right away because of that. I also am fully willing to acknowledge that the Giants' offense looked goddamn terrible. So there's no real silver lining there for the Giants. They're already in a tough spot after 1 week. If for no other reason than the pressure is going to be on them immensely, simply by the nature of the city they play in, and the nature of the situation, which is everybody there, like their head is on the block. So I'm curious to see how they go forward. I hope they show a little bit of restraint, a little bit of patience, and give it a little bit of time, but it feels like they're going to be a team that gets desperate pretty quick. Defensively, they did all right. Defensively, they only gave up 21 to the Commanders. Jaden Daniels doing a good job getting the ball out quick, but in the times he didn't, the Giants' defensive line proved why people are weary of holding the ball. So they got pressure. They did a lot of good things in terms of being just effective and causing the Commanders to do a lot of quick things and not getting a ton of explosive plays, but ultimately, Washington's just too good for them. Like Jaden Daniels is too good for them. Deebo Samuel had a nice game, and the Giants just aren't that kind of team. I think something else to monitor is obviously Malik Neighbors melting down on the sidelines already. I think that, listen, he's got a right to be upset about losing. He's got a right to be frustrated with the situation. All that stuff's totally fair. But I do think there does need to be something said about time and place, and some of those things should be expressed behind closed doors and not necessarily expressed all over the sidelines. Like, try to show some form of unity as a player, but I understand his frustration. I just think that an element of being a professional football player is taking those punches and just having to roll with them, and I don't think he's done a particularly great job of that. And I get it, but I think that if you want to turn your situation from bad to worse in the NFL really quickly, be making a scene on the sideline because now everybody's going to be asking about it. Buccaneers Falcons, close game, closely contested game. Looked like the Falcons were going to win it at the end, but then Baker Mayfield to Emeka Egbuka wins it for the Buccaneers. Michael Penix played pretty well, but it just felt like the Falcons were a little bit off. They just weren't quite able to connect on all the things that they probably would have wanted to. And Tampa Bay was a little bit sloppy as well, but you just saw the experience and the toughness of the Buccaneers. And when things were really difficult, Tampa Bay was just a little bit more composed because they've been here before in these kind of situations. And while I saw a lot of promising signs from Atlanta, I picked Atlanta to win this division. A big part of all that was the idea that they would sort of come together as the year goes along, and that's why I picked Tampa Bay this week, where I thought Tampa would start the year just a little bit stronger, and I think that looks to be the case. Atlanta's got potential, but Tampa's got experience. And these division games, especially one like the NFC South, where it feels like really only two teams are in the race for it at all, those games are going to be huge. So that's Tampa Bay up 1-0 on the Falcons in their matchup, and it feels like that could be very, very important. Bengals Browns. I picked the Bengals to win a week 1 game finally, and they did, but it was about as unimpressive as you could have possibly drawn it up. I think it's something they gained 7 yards in the entire second half. Something like that, something crazy. Cleveland basically dominated them for the entire second half of this game, and if not for some special teams gaffes and some drop passes, like it felt like the Browns basically just handed the game to the Bengals, and the Bengals will happily take it. But that was not necessarily the start I was expecting from Cincinnati. Joe Burrow had 113 yards. T. Higgins led the team in receiving yards with 33. And yeah, it's just that's I don't think that's what the Bengals thought they were paying for when they gave Jamar Chase and T. Higgins all that money, but 1-0 is better than 0-1, and you'd rather learn from a win than from a loss. And for the Bengals, they've lost all those games in previous years, so I think despite it being really ugly, you have to be happy with it. The best player in this game by a mile was Myles Garrett, which, big surprise. Myles Garrett is an awesome player. Racked himself up 2 sacks in this game and a couple of other nasty hits. So while the Browns fell short, they put up a good fight. And if they just clean some stuff up in terms of just, we can't be dropping passes, we can't be missing extra points and things like that, all of a sudden they could win like a game like this pretty easily. But unfortunately, they didn't quite do it. So it is what it is. On to the next one, which is Raiders-Patriots. Lots of positives for the Raiders. Obviously, they win this game 20-13. But I don't think that we could really talk about this game without mentioning the fact that Brock Bowers exits this game with a knee injury. Luckily, they seem to be saying that they're evaluating his status for week 2, which to me means no catastrophic damage being done. Geno Smith played a really, really good game. I believe it was 362 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Genti, only 38 yards on 19 carries. Not great, obviously. I know some people are going to be talking about that, but he also had the lowest average yards before contact in the entire league, so they didn't really block great for him. And I think that's something that just takes time. Like even with the positions that people think it's a little bit easier to transition to in the NFL, there's still a difference in speed. There's a difference in strength. There's a difference in how decisive you have to be. And I think we need to give him a little bit of time on that. But it definitely wasn't this, awesome debut. As for the Patriots, Drake May had almost 300 yards, 287 yards. And ultimately, I think this sort of just showed that for as much optimism as there is around the Patriots, they are still a team that's beginning a rebuild in earnest this year. And they still have a ways to go, particularly in terms of offensive talent. I think that they'll be in a lot of one-score games, close games. But I think it's also pretty likely that they won't win the vast majority of them. Um, and while I'm optimistic about their future, and I am like impressed with Drake May and the fact that they don't have the most talent in the world, but he still puts up pretty good showings. I mean, every once in a while he makes a boneheaded play, but he is also still a younger guy and he's being asked to do a lot. But ultimately, Raiders get the win despite the Bowers injury, and I think that that's something where we sort of have to wait and see, because if they don't have him, they just don't have a whole lot in the receiving room outside of Jakobi Meyers. So that's something to monitor. But good win by the Raiders, especially to start off on the road and get the win. You love to see that. 49ers, they go to Seattle and beat the Seahawks 17-13 in what was a pretty ugly game. A game that also, injuries struck San Francisco again. George Kittle pulls a hamstring. Juwan Jennings exits in the second half with a shoulder. Seattle was not immune from injuries either. Nick Emanwari got a high ankle sprain on the, I think, was it I want to say it might have been the first defensive snap of the game. It was really early. So that was a bummer for them as well. Ultimately, this was a game that was decided by special teams in a lot of ways, or could have been, where Jake Moody misses an absolute chip shot, gets another one blocked. So as a 49ers fan, I am thoroughly sick of him and would love to see them move on from him. I wish him all the best. I'm sure he's a great guy, but it can't be something where you're holding your breath every time the dude steps up to kick the ball, and it just is like there's just no faith to be had in him, and that's a big problem with your kicker. So ultimately, San Francisco could have won this game 23-13, but did not happen. They win at the very end, where Seattle's driving. Nick Bosa bull rushes Abraham Lucas into the lap of Sam Darnold, forces the fumble, recovers it, and that's all she wrote. Not a pretty game from either team offensively, but I think you can attribute that to new scheme, injury, whatever you want. But ultimately, hard-fought game in the NFC West. Both teams come out of it with some injuries, but San Francisco comes out of it with the win. And the 49ers injuries are going to have to be something we monitor going forward, because apparently Kittle's going to miss a couple weeks with that hamstring, and with him not in there, that receiving core is very, very thin, despite Ricky Pearsall having 100 yards. Titans and Broncos. Broncos win 20-12. I think Cam Ward showed some signs of life, but pretty much as me and anyone else could have told you, opening up on the road in Denver against what might be the best defense in the entire league, it's not the ideal way to start your career, and it's basically played out that way. The Broncos were really sloppy in their own right. They turned the ball over a ton. They did everything they could to lose this game, essentially, but Tennessee's offense could not move the ball to save their life. And I think that's going to be the story for a lot of teams against Denver. I don't think a whole lot of teams are going to have great days playing against the Broncos defense, but all that becomes even more exaggerated when you're taking a rookie quarterback and a team that was not good last year. The offensive line gave up a ton of pressure and a ton of sacks. There was just nothing the Titans could do. I don't take much away from this game for either team in terms of big picture stuff. The Broncos played sloppy on offense, which is probably the thing I'll be watching the most. But other than that, this game went about as you would have expected. So, Tennessee, any fans of the Titans shouldn't be really worried about this game. That's about as tough a challenge as you're going to get to start your career. So, I think there should still be a lot of optimism for Cam Ward. That was just a brutal scheduling break to start the career off. So, other than that, I'm watching the Broncos offense for the next couple weeks. They got to clean some stuff up. Lions, Packers. Packers win 27-13, and it wasn't really even that close. They pretty thoroughly dominated them. You could see the effect of the two coordinator changes. They just weren't quite as creative on offense. and they just seemed a bit off on defense as well. I think it's something that could work itself out, but it could also signal some regression for the Lions this year. And that's not totally unexpected. Green Bay looked very impressive. Jordan Love played a great game. Obviously, everyone was talking about Micah Parsons. He got a sack, even in limited opportunity. I think he played, 20, 29 snaps, something like that. He didn't play the whole game on defense by any means, but he was certainly impactful. And to do so against tackles like Taylor Decker and in particular Penei Sewell, that's very impressive. It's almost like we all knew Micah Parsons was great at football, and it was absolutely asinine for the Cowboys to trade him. But here we are. So ultimately, I don't think there's too much to be taken away from this game other than Green Bay looks legit. And I think that we have to see how well those receivers and everything like that hold up against every team. But in a one game sample, they showed their ceiling and they showed their potential, and it is very high potential. They could be very, very good this year. As for Detroit, big letdown to start the year. I think those two coordinator changes might just be a bit much, especially in the early part of the year. Well, they have a lot to sort out. So we'll see, but obviously not an encouraging start for Detroit and a very encouraging one for Green Bay. Texans Rams. Rams win 14-9. Ugly game, physical game. The story of this game was basically the thing that I said to break down why I picked the Rams. The Texans' offensive line is a problem. The Texans just couldn't get anything going. Nothing at all. And even when they did, all of a sudden, we're punching the ball out, and Braden Fisk is making a really cool fumble recovery. So this was a game that was really defined by physical play. Obviously, people have seen the Puka Nacua thing where he got bounced around a couple times and is like bleeding. He's got the hair hanging out of the front of his helmet, all that type of stuff. These two teams went out there and they beat the hell out of each other, and ultimately the Texans just were not able to overcome that offensive line. I mean, that thing's a problem. I still don't know what exactly the plan was for that. Like, it seems like they traded away guys without any thought to a solution. But they got home a couple of times, and it really was just it was ugly for the Texans offense. It wasn't great for the Rams offense either, but we all knew that the Texans defense was going to be really good. The suspicion was the Rams defenses too, especially given how they finished the year, but man, the Texans have a problem. If their offensive line is going to play that poorly, they're going to be in a couple of games like that this year. And while I do say I like to give teams a few weeks to really figure it out, whenever I see something that we all thought could be a glaring weakness or a really great strength and it shows up right away, I put a little bit more stock in that, like I will for like the 49ers special teams, where it's like that kicker is still missing stuff. We have a problem. That Texans offensive line is still bad. We have a problem. On to Sunday Night Football, which, I mean, game of the year right away, week one, really strong possibility of it. Bills and Ravens decided to put on an absolute show for us all. Bills win 41-40 in a crazy comeback down the stretch. What's to be said, really? Both these teams were electric on offense. There was definitely a little bit of sloppiness and luck involved in the Bills' comeback, with Derrick Henry, of all people, fumbling the ball after having an absolute killer game. He played great basically the whole day with 170 yards on 18 carries, 169 yards on 18 carries. That fumble, it sucks, and it gave the Bills a lot of life. The Ravens missed an extra point in there too, which obviously, given the end score here, pretty major. So yeah, it's a tough one there. Baltimore outplayed them basically the whole day, and then it just collapsed, which you'd love to say that it's a fluke, but Baltimore's had a few of these now where they're up big, they're up double digits, and just down the stretch of the fourth quarter, it all comes apart. And if it happens once or twice, that's a fluke. It can happen to anybody once or twice. But when it happens at a really high rate like this, and not even really high, but relatively high compared to everybody else, um, there's got to be something in there in terms of a lesson to take away from that. And I don't know exactly what that is if you're the Ravens, because you got great personnel, you're outplaying them almost the entire game, and then the wheels just come off. And I think that this is also a really good opportunity to talk about uh, why Josh Allen is held in such high regard, because Baltimore is better than Buffalo in almost every single way, and somehow that dude just puts on the cape and still wins. So, absolute classic of a game. That's a game that'll be talked about all year and probably for years to come, between two of the best quarterbacks in the whole league. But that's got to be a tough flight home if you're the Ravens. You know, you really let one get away. And the thing about that is there's such a good chance that both of these two teams are down there and like fighting for really high playoff seeding at the end. The only way that they're not is if they happen to be one of the teams that's just decimated by injury. And if you're the Ravens, that may have just cost you getting this game in Baltimore. Um, and it's brutal. So, absolute classic of a game, but that's killer for the Ravens. And if you're the Bills, you got to feel like you kind of stole one. But hey, a win's a win, and by any means necessary, man. That's one of the most crazy, impressive comebacks I've seen in a very long time. And then lastly, Monday Night Football, the Vikings and the Bears. Talk about a tale of two halves. So the Vikings win this game 27-24, and it started off about as ugly as it could for the Vikings. Couple of 3-and-outs. They throw a pick six in there. Chicago goes right down the field and scores a touchdown right away. Doesn't really score again until basically the end of the game, and it's just it's it's a real testament to Kevin O'Connell, his staff, and their ability to keep these guys present in the moment and not get thrown off. Because there's a whole lot of teams that when that thing starts to go and it starts to snowball, they let it go, and it gets away from them so fast. But Minnesota stayed locked in. It's also a testament to JJ McCarthy playing in his first start, and to start off as poorly as he did and to finish as strongly as he did. That's a real testament to his mental toughness within the game. As for the Bears, I think that there's actually a lot to take away from this that was pretty positive. Like, they were moving the ball pretty well. It was just small miscues on crucial downs that really did it for the Bears. Um, you could tell there were moments where Caleb Williams was pressing, and when he was pressing, he was just sort of slinging the ball and like throwing a rocket, and then he would lose his accuracy. So I think that's something where just taking a deep breath and set your feet and really just deliver a good ball. He started off great. I think he started off 10 for 10. But then by the end of the game, they were having a hard time with even the most basic plays. And I think both of these offensive lines at different points in the game looked a little overwhelmed, and they've struggled to get the running games going until the very end where Minnesota sort of got it to go. But ultimately, I came out of this game feeling pretty decent about both teams. Both defenses had a decent showing at different points in the game, and both offenses showed a lot of promise. Um, Obviously, Minnesota gets the win, so that's great. And as for Chicago, it really is just small moments. It's little things. We got to stay ahead of the chains. Both teams, Minnesota in particular, was struggling with like delay a game stuff and getting a little too low in the play clock before being able to get snaps off. But it affected both teams, and I think that's just symptoms of having young quarterbacks in there. But I came out of that game ultimately impressed by both. I know that a lot of people are going to be, you know, feeling pretty negative about the Bears given that they let this game slip away, but Caleb Williams looked a lot more poised than he did last year, and or at least a lot more confident, and he knew where to go with the ball. It was just slight misses here and there where it really was the difference in the game. But huge credit to the Vikings. They get the win, and the Bears have to go back to work and try to just make the little incremental steps that will make that a win. So ultimately, I think we had a great week for week one, and a couple great games. Like that Bills Ravens game in particular. I mean, anyone who watched that game, that was an awesome game. But a lot to look forward to next week. I'm curious about a lot of things with a couple of these teams where these next 2 weeks are gonna be very telling. And while some of these teams sort of showed up looking how you expected, I think we got a lot of really sloppy football from some others, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, which at this point has become typical with less practice time in training camp, less playing time in the preseason. We see this all the time where offenses come out and they're just a little out of sync. So over these next 2 weeks, we'll see who really separates themselves, and we'll see who has some real problems. All right, so thanks so much for watching. Hit like, hit subscribe, and have a great night, and let's all look forward to week 2. Peace.